You know how there are consequences to smashing your thumb with a hammer? Being a carpenter, I can definitely tell you there are consequences. There are consequences to everything. Or you could say there are resulting outcomes to everything. But I'll stick with the word consequence. And likewise, if you, as an adult, as a journeyman carpenter, all right, this is what I do with I started off as a live edge piece of wood. I cut it in half and filled it with epoxy. It is quite the extensive job to do. The leg system, if you can see underneath, is, let me bring that up a little bit. There you go. It's stainless steel framework underneath, and the legs are attached to the stainless steel. You can see there's kind of a gap there. So they're actually kind of like free-floating legs in a way, actually. It's hard to tell from this angle, but there's so much fill in the center. Like if there were a light below that, you'd be able to see the light below it. But, and then I don't know if it focuses, but that's like a little jewel right there. That's kind of my signature thing that I do. This is a black walnut piece of wood, and it is, I'm sorry about the camera work. You know, even if you're medically trained, you are wise enough to know that when you smash your thumb with a hammer, what the consequences are going to be. It's going to hurt hard. You're going to have to put a bandage on it. You know in advance what to do should that unfortunate situation happen. Now, as a little child, the consequences are exactly the same. A little child can slam his finger with a thumb, and the consequences are identical. There's going to be severe pain, bleeding, but the young child doesn't know because he or she isn't aware that you might have to wrap it with a bandage or put ice on it, or there's so many things that an aware adult knows what to do. Without belaboring that any further, that's what this video is about. Consequences of enlightenment. And I'm talking about both Buddha enlightenment and God enlightenment. There are consequences. The whole point, now, one of the aspects or points of studying, reading, trying to inquire what enlightenment is all about, is to make yourself aware of the consequences, just like a seasoned carpenter, so that when the event happens, you know what to do, rather than being like a little child and not knowing what to do. That is one of the points, if not the main point, of studying enlightenment before it ever happens. Because if a child is playing with a hammer and smashes his finger, that's the same thing as becoming enlightened without being prepared for it first. You can become enlightened without being prepared. And it's unadvisable. So that's what I'm talking about on this particular video, the consequences. First, let me start off with, and I've mentioned this many, many times, but I'm going to be crystal clear on what enlightenment is and maybe what it isn't. Enlightenment, in regards to spiritual enlightenment, the same thing that Buddha went through. And mind you, this is simple. This is extremely simple to understand from an enlightened point of view. It is simply put the experiential episode of experiencing reality to be nothing, no thing, an illusion. People say it's an illusion, but an illusion has more sustenance to it than the realization that comes from enlightenment. In other words, you could have a dream during the night, and it could be an actual dream, not a nightmare, but a dream. And you awaken, and there's nothing to it. It's all illusory. That's similar to enlightenment, because when you awaken from the dream, you realize, well, wait a second. I can't really fly through the sky. I can't do those things that I did while I was in the dream. Even though you can try, you can't do it. So, that's what enlightenment is. God enlightenment is the same exact thing, only in the opposite. In other words, you realize from enlightenment that reality is an illusion. There's no reality to it. God enlightenment is the opposite, in that God is not an illusion, that in fact God is I was going to say reality, but God is real. And you experience God. And then you become God enlightened from that. That doesn't happen very often. So what's the consequences of enlightenment? Well, you recognize experientially that reality is an illusion. And the consequences, like I said, smashing your thumb and being aware of what you're supposed to do to make sure your thumb heals itself and stuff like that. It's best to get this clarified in your head before the event ever happens. And what I mean by that is clarify it in such a way that you will know how to reassemble reality. And what do I mean by reassembling reality? In other words, how are you going to make sense of what reality is? What are you going to do after you become enlightened to reassemble reality? Because everyone does it uniquely. So, the consequences of enlightenment are, you know 100% sure that 100% of everything is an illusion. It doesn't really exist. So now that you're enlightened, let's proceed to before I go to that, let me just make, because this was in my head also. Enlightenment, I was going to say almost always, but I think I backtrack that and say always. Enlightenment is always comes about from the most mundane, inconsequential, the most basic of all things. I have read things where it's like, after I read it, it's like, yeah, that person definitely became enlightened. And one of the episodes was somebody was talking about how they were sitting in a bathtub and the water was dripping into the bathtub, and they watched it one drip at a time, kerplunk, kerplunk, and they were watching the drips hit the water, and that initiated enlightenment. So it is the most silly, seemingly silly things that cause enlightenment to come about. Me personally, I had studied for many years, maybe even a decade, about the consequences of enlightenment, although I wasn't trying to become enlightened, but and I recognized it through the concept that Zenos put forward, the Greek philosopher, of half and half and half and half, and of course the guy that called excuse me, Max Planck came up with the Planck length, which is totally false and untrue. It's just some speculation on the point of a person that could not make the leap from unenlightened to enlightened. And so he invented a length. That's a side note. So what about, for me, the crazy thing was, and I've told that story before, I was laying on a bed because I was not feeling well, and I was watching the sunlight come through this actually window right here several years ago. I was watching the sunlight come through this window and it was coming across this particular wall, actually right above my head. Probably took a couple hours. I just kept staring at it, and the sunlight eventually moved far enough that the shadow was no longer, when I say shadow, no, it was the direct beam of the sunlight was no longer in this particular room, because the earth spins, and when it was no longer in this room, it was instantly I became enlightened. So when that happens, you absolutely cannot ever again, as long as you are alive, consider the possibility that sunlight is real, vibrations are real, the universe is real, there's any validity to numerology. 1 plus 1 doesn't really equal 2, but it does in this reality, but it's make-believe. So another side note, one way you tell if a person really is enlightened is they can come across as being the most arrogant person on the planet when you talk to them, because their confidence is unshakable, because they know the truth. There are things that Jesus talked about, like they have eyes but they can't see, and ears but they can't hear. So the enlightened person can see, they can hear, and they are communicating with people that cannot see and cannot hear. But the people that are unenlightened think they can see and think they can hear. Why? Because they hear things in this reality, because they see things in this reality. But they're not real. They're illusory. The physical human body is a part of this illusion. And so it sees and it hears. And it fixates upon what it sees and what it hears and says, oh, that's what I hear. That's what I see. What more could there possibly be? They're lost in the illusion. And when the enlightened person speaks to them, it's on a different level. And then when they're questioned, that's where the arrogance comes across. It appears arrogant from the unenlightened point of view, but in reality, it's not arrogant. One way they come across as not being arrogant is they speak plainly and clearly, but they color it by saying they're a Zen master. Pretty much all teachings that are in Zen are because the individual is enlightened. And then they color it with, I'm Zen. I'm teaching Zen. That's a way of communicating enlightened point of views in such a way that the unenlightened can listen and hear and go, oh, that's very interesting. I don't understand what it means, but at least it's interesting. I don't know if that's going over your head or if you understand what I'm talking about. But yeah, so the consequences are you can never, ever be fooled again. It's like I'm going to, I brought this up with my wife even this morning. I was trying to think about reality. And I'm not talking about this reality. I'm talking about the true reality where the illusion emanates from, okay? So, and of course it's so complex. Anyways, it's not really complex, but that's funny because I said complex, not complex. That's Zen. That's, it's, I don't know, it's weird. It's fun. I think that's why Zen masters laugh all the time, because they understand what's going on and nobody else does. And so it's, I don't know, it's kind of funny actually. Anyways, where was I at? I was talking about how when you're trying to communicate what the true reality is from an enlightened point of view, it comes across in such a way that cannot be understood because normal people are so confused by the illusion. And so there is both the physical illusion, and then there is the intellectually knowledge that is put out there as to what reality is, what spirituality is, and everything. And every human being that matures in this world is taught such confusing garbage, and not garbage, but it would be like, you know how a picture has so many pixels in it. It's like a jigsaw puzzle almost. And if you break it down into all the individual pixels and you scatter them all over the place, and you can look at it and it's like, oh, that's a beautiful picture. It's, golly, I'm trying to remember some artist's name, but I can't. It doesn't come to me right now. But just, it's like scattered colors and everything and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, that's so beautiful. But that isn't the picture. That isn't the picture at all. It just, you've been taught that's a beautiful picture, but it's just the scattered pixels of their true picture. And so you think it's beautiful, and then when somebody tries to explain it to you from an enlightened point of view, you don't get it. And that's the way knowledge is in this particular world. They teach you about chakras, and they teach you about enlightenment, what it is, and they teach you about philosophy and wisdom and all these certain things, and it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense, oh yeah, and you spend a lifetime learning all that stuff. But it's just the scrambled pixels. Some of it is totally fake. Most of it is probably true, but it's so scrambled, there is no way to really know what it is. And when the enlightened person is trying to convey to you what reality is, you argue with them. You don't believe them because you are looking at a picture that everyone has told you is true. You've got thousands of years of written knowledge that you're aware of. You've got the Vedas and the Holy Bible and the Bhagavad Gitas, and you've got teachings from false prophets and gurus that are not enlightened, and the whole cadre of information that's out there, and it's all a confusing, on purpose. So what's the simple truth? What is the actual simple truth of why this reality exists? Why are you in it? What are you doing here? What is the point of it? Of course, I have taught that in many of my videos, but again, just to make it all into one video, I'm going to define to you in crystal clarity, which is you'll understand it, but you're not going to understand it. That's funny again, because that's Zen. That's the way Zen is taught, by the way. So, what is it? Simply put, I don't want to lose my train of thought, because I have other ideas I want to talk about Advaita. And since I don't have a live audience here, normally I'd pick out somebody and say, remind me of Advaita, so I can come back to that. But I don't have that. I'm here by myself. Anyways, so what's the simple truth of why everything exists the way it is? I'll tell you, simply put, so that you can know what you are. That is the most simplest of truths. Next to that is so that God can know what you are. Next to that is so that we, some of us meaning, so that we can experience and grow love. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. It is so damned simple. So that you can know what you are, so that God can know what you are, and so that you can experience and grow love. That is the most simplest way that I can put it. Written in the Bible, Jesus taught it in the most simple way. He basically said everything can be boiled down to love God, love yourself, and love your neighbor. There is no other. Or let's put it this way, everything else falls under that. The pyramid of all truth and all reality is built upon love God, love yourself, and love your neighbor. But herein lies the thing. See, all of those three things, if you understand them correctly, love yourself, love God, and love your neighbor, that wipes out the false teaching of non-duality. How does it wipe it out? In so many ways, it's unbelievable. But if you're coming from a non-duality standpoint, it's very difficult to understand why that's true. But it is crystal clear. Now I'll get back to the Advaita thing that I was telling you about. So it's funny in a way, because Advaita boils down to all things are one. Meaning, like they misunderstand when Jesus said, I and the Father are one. And then in Buddhism and Hinduism and all that kind of stuff, they say, not two. Well, okay, well then everything is one. They boil it down to one. But that's the funny thing of enlightenment. One of the consequences of enlightenment are realizing numerology doesn't exist. And since numerology doesn't exist, then the next step is then separation can't exist. And so they all, the non-duality folks that have misinterpreted Advaita, bring it back and say, well, then everything is one. But that's the funny thing. Everything is not one. Everything is zero. And when there is zero, there is a potential for all things. But if it's one, that isn't the potential for all things, because everything is one. There's another way to, you remember when I talked about in the first part where you hit your thumb with a hammer, the consequences are pain and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, one of the things of enlightenment is the realization that everything is not one, that in fact everything is zero. Now, if you're not aware, like a little child that hits their thumb and they think they're going to die or whatever, that's because they haven't become aware. They haven't educated themselves yet to be aware that in fact you got to get a bandage out and wrap it and stop it from bleeding, put an ice pack on it. There's a lot of different things to do to take care of yourself. But that's because that person has made themselves aware and educated as to the consequences of hammering your thumb. Likewise, the consequences of understanding prior to becoming enlightened what reality is, like what I'm teaching, is if and when you do become enlightened, you will never fall prey to the false teachings of non-duality. But if you're not aware, you will fall prey to that. And why do I say that? Because it's built into your DNA from the very beginning to default to non-duality. And why do I say that? Is because when you realize that everything is an illusion, then you become a part of that illusion. And when you become a part of that illusion, the consequences, meaning you assume yourself to be a part of that illusion, and then everything is one. That is the consequences of actual ignorance. So an enlightened person can be not ignorant of reality, but ignorant of their own essence self, and assume themselves to be a part of the illusion, when in fact they are not. From one level above ignorance, then everything is one. One level above ignorance is everything is one. And then Advaita is interpreted as everything is one. You are part of the illusion. You are God in essence, because the illusion is seen differently as, the illusion is created by a God, the absolute, the creator, call it whatever you want, Brahma, whatever, it doesn't matter. But whatever that is that's creating that illusion, you are part of it because you exist within it. That's one step above ignorance. But when you are educated prior to becoming enlightened, that somebody like me is telling you, no, that is not true. That is true from a perspective of one step above total ignorance, meaning unenlightened, meaning you are part of this carnal reality, this physical reality. You are totally unaware of anything beyond what is in this physical reality. You may be educated to certain aspects of spirituality, but like I said, that's the messed up, pixelated reality that you can't make sense of. So one of the consequences of enlightenment is realizing that everything is an illusion. It isn't real. But you, your essence, is not a part of that. It's participating through the physical body that is a part of that illusion. But you are not a part of it. You don't know what you are yet. There is only one way for you to know what you are. First off, you can be aware that listening to somebody like me is telling you you're not a part of it. That begins the stages of you educating yourself as to, prior to becoming enlightened, that you are not a part of the illusion. You're not even a part of the creator of the illusion. And the only way to know that is you have to have the Creator tell you that, communicate that to you. God enlightenment is that, is the very process, the instantaneous awareness that you are not a part of that illusion. You're not a part of God. When the consequences of God talking to you is the realization that you aren't God. That's one of the consequences of it. God doesn't talk to God. That is insanity. That's just stupidness to think of such a thing. I guess what is a soliloquist or whatever, a person talking to themselves. Okay, that's true. A person can be a soliloquist, but God is not so silly or stupid as to talk to himself or herself or whatever. I mean, you can think that as an ignorant person, but it isn't true. I guess the way I'm talking right now is coming across as the arrogant part of what an enlightened person can actually be. And I guess that's why Jesus followed up when he said certain things like this, and after you chastise, if you will, to follow up with words of love and everything. That's why I started a couple years ago, because when I tell you in my videos that I love you, I don't do it because Jesus said to do that. But when Jesus said to do that, it caused me to think and everything, and to realize, educate myself basically from the teachings of Jesus, to go, wait a second. Why don't I tell the people in the video that I love them? Well, that's stupid. The whole point of me making videos is to tell the truth, to dispel ignorance and everything. And it's like, but I do love the people that I teach. I really do. And I need to let them know that. And that's how you dispel, or that's how I dispel arrogance and everything. When I can teach such hard things and tell you to your face you're an ignorant fool if you don't understand something correctly. But when I follow up and I tell you, you know what, I love you. And when I tell you, you know what, I stand by what I say. I'm not just saying this because I'm trying to make money, or I want power, or I want followers, or any of these things that are absolutely not true. I do it because I love you. And I do it because I love God. And I do it because I love myself. And I love Christ. And that's why I do it. And then I follow up and tell you, I love you. Because I really do. And that opens the door for you to love me. And then when you love me, your defenses are lowered and lowered and lowered to the point where eventually there are no defenses left. And why? Because love dispels. You know how you put a drop of oil in water and the water just kind of like goes this way, it dispels. Love, when you put a drop of love in your heart or soul, it dispels fear. It just, boom, it just goes. And when love fills your heart and soul, there's no more fear. And so when I'm talking to you and you love me and I love you and there's that love in there, all the fear is dispelled. Now, what is my main goal with you? What is my main goal? My main goal is to prepare you prior to enlightenment, to prepare you prior to God enlightenment, to prepare you as best I possibly can, so that when that time happens, you are now completely and utterly on your own. You have me as a friend, but you are utterly on your own. You don't even have God to fall back upon. You are utterly on your own. It's a scary place to be. But when love is completely and utterly filling your heart and soul, there is no fear. It dissipates. And now you can explore this absolute freedom of knowing that you're existing and nothing else exists. But you exist. And that could be an extremely scary situation for people. Just like the child hitting their thumb and thinking they're going to die because the pain is so bad and maybe it's bleeding. A little child is going to think, I'm scared, I'm going to die. Where's my mommy? Where's my daddy? Whatever the case may be. That's like an enlightened person becoming enlightened. The fear could be so great. But if you're educated and you have love in your heart and soul, there's no fear. And in fact, the opposite is true. It is such a freeing. I had a dream one time, and it wasn't a dream, it was a vision. And the vision was, I might have told this on one of my videos before, but it dealt with enlightenment. I was a bird, and I was flying, and I thought that that was really awesome, and flying and flying and flying. And eventually I thought, you know what, I'm going to have to land. I've been flying for a long time, I got to land. There was no land to land on. There was no trees, no branches, nothing. There was clouds I'm flying through and everything. And I thought maybe the ocean was below me or something. And mind you, in this vision, dream, I thought it was real. I mean, when I woke up from it, it was like, whoa, I thought that was real, you know. Anyways, I must have flown for days, if not weeks, and finally I got so tired, I thought to myself, you know what, I'm going to quit flying and fall. And hopefully before I hit the ground, I'll see the ground and I'll start flying again and land somewhere. So I fell. And I fell for a couple hours, just falling and falling. But I still saw no land. I saw no ocean. I fell through clouds, and then I fell and fell, and it was clear. And then things that seemed like didn't know what they were so far below me. Hell, it took me an hour to get to it falling, and it turned out to be another layer of clouds, and I fell through those. And then finally I gained enough strength because I rested enough from falling. I started flying again. And I flew for a while, and then I got so tired, I thought, I can't do this anymore. And so I started falling again. And this process happened 2 or 3 times before I finally decided, you know what? I'm going to quit flying. This is just so annoying, so boring, so frustrating. I mean, you can't fly forever. This is ridiculous. I thought, I'm just going to fall, and I'm just going to fall forever until I hit the ground and die. I hit the ocean and drown, whatever it is. And so I fell and fell and fell and fell, and I just determined I'm going to hit the ground. And so I realized that I'm never going to hit the ground. I could fall for a month, a week, 20 years. It didn't matter. I'd falling through one layer of clouds after another, after another, after another. And I thought, well, this is stupid. I'm just going to fall forever. You might as well fly. Okay, so I started flying, and then I started doing other things, and then I woke up. Oh my God, can you imagine? That's kind of like what enlightenment is from a fear base. Can you imagine waking up from enlightenment and realizing there is no solid ground to stand on? There is no planet Earth. There's no light, sunlight. There's nothing. And yet you can see it all, but there's nothing. Because you know it's nothing from enlightenment. Well, you better dispel that fear before you get to that point. Because if you can dispel the fear through love, what else is there? There's no solid ground. What are you going to find? What are you going to find beside yourself? I found you. You found me. I found my wife. My wife found me. My children. Others. God. God found me. That's what there is. That's what there is to find. That's your solid ground. That's what reality is. And it's all based upon love. And that's what I teach you. Everything else is a distraction. I'm not saying everything else, there's no foundation to it. Like there is a foundation to the illusion, meaning the foundation is Brahma creates the illusion. And it emanates from Brahma, the God that Jesus prayed to. But it's still an illusion. There is no tangibility to it other than what you think there is. And what you think is based upon an illusion. It isn't real. Don't think that enlightened people, when they say, myself included, that reality is illusory, don't think that that is just a saying, or it means something else. No, don't think that at all. Take my word for it. It's nothing. It doesn't exist. It is an illusion. It is not a dream. You're not existing within a dream, and then when you wake up, you'll go, oh, this is my, there is nothing. There can be nothing. The happy thought in Christianity is, oh, I'll go to heaven, and the streets will be paved with gold, and there will be Father in heaven and my children, and we'll have mansions in heaven. That's all illusory. You'll realize that on enlightenment. There is no heaven. There is no hell. There is none of that. There cannot be anything. It's impossible for that to exist. But it can exist to the same tune that this reality can exist. There can be an illusory heaven. There can be an illusory hell. And I don't doubt that there are. But from an enlightened point of view, they don't exist either, any more than this reality does. If you want to wake up in hell and go, oh my gosh, I died and I went to hell. It's so bad. Or I'm so happy I died and I went to heaven. You can think those things and you can wake up there. But it ain't real. You're going to have to become enlightened when you're in heaven or when you're in hell, and wake up and go, oh my gosh. When I say wake up, meaning become enlightened. And go, oh, well, these aren't real either. It's just another level of the illusory reality. Again, what is it for? Why did God create the illusion? So that you can experience yourself developing into what you are. This particular reality we live in right now, I personally think it's hell. I mean, I think it's bad enough to qualify as hell, but at the same time, it can be enjoyable. It can be fun. You can have a great time in this reality. But make no mistake, it gives an opportunity for people to do anything they want, whatever it is that they want to do. This particular planet Earth reality, uh, so many people exercise their free will in this reality to become what they heart and desire wants. Think about all the politicians in the world. They want to be rulers. They want to lord over it. They want to think about the war going on right now in Palestine with Israel and everything. Who knows if it's going to turn into a World War III? But that's all through ignorance. I mean, it's like the in this particular in the United States, you know, what do they try to teach the false teaching. When I say they, meaning the evil demonic forces, try to teach that white people hate black people and black people hate white people, and that Jews hate Goyas and that white people hate Jews and all. None of that's true. It's true from a standpoint of ignorance, but once love is in your heart and soul, all that crap is dispelled. It's all dispelled. I mean, I personally have witnessed many, many, many times, as well as all of you, I hope, that, you know, I go to the store and I remember a few years ago, I go into the automotive store to get some parts or whatever, and there's this badass looking black guy that, I mean, just muscle bound. He looked like this gang banger that wants to haul off and kill you in a heartbeat, you know. But I love those opportunities so because love is in my heart and soul. And I talk to the guy and I go, hey, how's it going? And I strike up a conversation and in a heartbeat that black guy and I am just having a good time chit-chatting and everything. And I shake his hand and he shakes his hand to me as I get my stuff and leave the store and everything. And, you know, but that's true about almost all humans, But you somehow have to start the process. It's just like what's going on in the wars right now in Israel between the Islam and Judaism. That fight has been going on for 2,000-3,000 years and everything. But it's all based upon ignorance. And yeah, is it true that they're killing each other? Absolutely. But it's all based upon ignorance. It's because of the false teachings of the world and everything. But if you could take a person individually, get them out of that group that they are engulfed in. I'm way off on tangents. I'm sorry. Anyways, maybe because I haven't made a video in damn near a month. Anyways, I'm going to end this video. I love you. I really hope that this video reaches some of you, and I really hope that it makes sense to some of you. From my perspective, it is so damn simple. But I know I was in your shoes 20, 30 years ago. And I know that from your point of view, it is so difficult to comprehend. I found it so difficult to comprehend. I educated myself for decades, not anticipating becoming enlightened. I just educated myself because I love God. I love the concept of learning about spirituality more than anything, because I felt like that's becoming closer to God. And so I continued on that path. There are several people that watch my videos that we email back and forth. And I want you to know I'm so grateful that that happens. I am so grateful for the opportunity to answer your questions and to be your friend. And when you ask me questions, you have no idea how that helps me feel love and needed, if you will. I appreciate so much people that email me. I appreciate so much the people that make comments on these videos. Even the ones that are maybe mean-spirited. I even appreciate that. Why? Because I hope and pray that someday even the people that are mean-spirited will wake up and realize that I love them, that I hope that they can be awakened to enlightenment and be awakened to the fact that the fear and the hatred and all these stupid things that I say stupid, but they're not stupid. It's just part of the reality that helps us awaken and everything. That I hope that they and I can be friends someday, maybe not in this lifetime, but in future lifetimes, future realities, the end of the Kalpa, whatever the case may be. Thank you very much for watching. I love you, and I hope you have an absolute wonderful weekend, and I hope you have an absolute wonderful life, and I hope you can avoid these warring conflicts that are so prevalent in the world today, caused by demonic forces and everything. Thank you for watching. I love you. Bye.